Welcome to the Duality Way podcast, where we discuss all things health and wellness from a professional perspective, understanding the dualistic nature of life.
Today's topic is going to be desk exercises and micro movements, the wellness tool that can revolutionize your workplace. So we live in a world where it's normal to wake up and the only time you're really moving around is when you're getting ready. Then you get into your car or you get onto a bus or public transport or into a taxi or whatever, and you're sitting. And then you get to work and then you're sitting. And then you go to lunch and you're sitting. And then you get back to work and you're sitting. And then you go home, sitting on the way home, sitting when you get home, and then you go to bed. So we are sitting for a good 12, 16 hours a day now, and it's actually scary. And the adverse effects that it's having on our bodies is actually crazy. And I deal with people on a regular basis where they think I'm psychic because I start showing them certain stretches and I say, this is tight, isn't it? And they're like, oh my goodness, how did you know? And it's because almost every person I know is sitting for so long that all the same muscles are getting tight. We have developed desk exercises, which is basically just micro movements that you do throughout your day to help improve your blood flow and to help to alleviate a lot of the chronic issues that we're starting to get because we sit for so long.
Yeah, and it's funny because as much as we've created desk exercises, something you can do at your desk, the other thing people do oftentimes is that they start some sort of walking challenge at work or whatever, and the reason it works is it just gets you out of your chair.
Yeah.
And so what I love about desk exercises is even people who are in call centers don't have to necessarily leave their station.
Yeah.
They can stay in their cubicle, do the workout, which is like 5 minutes or whatever, and then they're good to go. You can go again, and not only that, but it also creates blood flow, it helps your brain to be more productive.
Yeah.
It gives you a nice little boost of happy juices that I normally get from coffee, but the nice part about being in a cafe is walking to get the coffee gives me endorphins, and then making the coffee gives me endorphins, and then doing the exercise then after gives me endorphins.
Or going on a walk in the park.
100%. But for those of you who aren't lucky enough to work in a park and you don't have access to just shut and go for a walk, it is important to have some sort of tool that you can use to create wellness within a space that works for you. So in our previous podcast, we were discussing burnout looks very different for different people, so it's important to know what it is you're looking for. But on top of that, it's also important to understand what works for me isn't going to work for you. That was the whole concept behind duality, is that you and I have very different approaches to the same thing. I'm much more hypertrophy focused, Carlo is much more recovery and mobility focused. Carlo likes to do things that go slow, I like to do things that go fast. The difference that happens is we get to the same place, not necessarily at the same time, but we do get to the same place. And sometimes the slow approach gets there faster than the fast approach. And sometimes the fast approach gets there faster. Voila. But on top of that, it's also important to note that the importance of desk exercises is not only the fact that it's something that you can fit into your day, it's something you can change to what works for you. If you find you've got a tight hip flexor from sitting all day, great. There's some stretches you can do for that. There's a movement you can do for that. If you find that you're someone like me who gets tight traps, there's a movement you can do for that. There's ways around it, and understanding how the body moves and works is important. It's a really important factor of life. You are in your body for your entire life. Why do you want to be in it stuff?
Yeah. I think what's also what I like to use this analogy is we are predominantly made of water. If water is stagnant, it's like if there's a pool of water that's stagnant, eventually what will happen is it goes rancid. You get stuff growing in it. You get all sorts of insects or whatever, and it just becomes murky. If you sit still for majority of your life, you're going to get ill because we are majority water. You know, so it's incredibly important to keep moving. And look, we developed desicizers as a counter against sitting because obviously sitting is the predominant movement that we do. This position that we are currently sitting in is the predominant movement. Sitting is not inherently bad. It's the fact that we do it for so long that's bad. And so the movements that we develop through desicizers help to counteract that. But if you are constantly changing positions throughout the day, if you're standing up working, sitting down working, walking, meeting, you know, you've got movement, there's flow in your body. And that is what is so important, is that you've got to have movement throughout your day. Back when, you know, we were subsistence farmers and, you know, all these things where labor was a part of our lives as we evolved and as we grew as a species, okay? You know, we never really sat for extended periods of time. Our society has now changed to the point where and not to the point where our evolution has caught up with it, but it's changed counterintuitively. And because of that, we're doing things that we're not designed for. And so, obviously it's going to have an adverse effect on our health. Study after study after study has shown it. So, move. You got to move. That is the most important thing. You've got to move.
Not only that, I also find, just to speak back to what you were saying about the rancid water.
Yeah.
And then you spoke about the fact that it's not necessarily sitting that's bad, it's the fact that we do it so much.
Yeah.
If you look at rain is a lovely thing. It's good for growth, it's good for... So a lot of people, for instance, that are in blue-collar working environments where they're standing all day, when I was a waiter, for instance, I would walk for 15 hours a day.
Yeah.
When I got home, there was nothing I wanted to do more.
That's it.
Because my legs were tired, my feet were sore. I used to wear the wrong shoes, but that's besides the point. And so sitting is not bad, but when you do it too much, and then on top of that, okay, I had knee surgery, so walking that many hours a day created its own strain. And so when we say desicizers are important for people that are sitting, it's not just people that are sitting.
Yeah.
It's also just important to move in a different way. Because if you're doing one thing all the time, your body's not going to keep up. That's just the reality of it. If you think of an engine, there's a reason there's a first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. They've all got different functions. If you stay in fifth gear, when you are in the wrong environment, your engine is going to suffer. It's going to flood with oil. And the same happens when it rains too much. The crops stop to grow nutrients and they get flushed with it. Flooding is an exceptionally dangerous thing for most crops. We are the same. Anytime we do too much of one thing, it's too bad. For instance, honey is a lovely replacement for sugar until you're drizzling a liter of honey a day. Then it stops being a good thing, you know. But you get what I mean. Like, yes, it is excessive. That was the point. Or for instance, a Panado can be an excellent way of doing a pain relief. But if you take 6 of them, it's going to have adverse effects. You know? And we naturally wouldn't. Why are we doing it for sitting? When we have our lunch break, why not go and walk first and then have your lunch break? Why not do a desicized movement first and then have your lunch break? It doesn't take that long to eat. Many of us are sitting and eating.
I think, you know, it's funny because, you know, the more you're talking about that, you know, it's the repetitive-ish, it's the repetitiveness that is the issue. That to me, it kind of is indicative of something called RSI, repetitive strain injury. And I think a lot of people are suffering from RSI that is related to their sitting. I mean, yeah, so to me, that makes sense. But yeah, it is. It's very varied movement. You need varied movement. And it's a bit of a cliche. It's moderation. And it's quite an annoying thing. But I think what the issue is that we end up going down a toxic cycle of sedentary behavior. And the further down you go in that cycle, the harder it is to get back out. I remember having this conversation with this woman when we were on conference, and she came to our table and she was talking for a long time. And she was just complaining about the fact that they had moved, she works for government, and they moved buildings they moved to another building. And her biggest issue that she had was that she said that there were 43 stairs that she had to, and she counted them, 43 stairs that she had to climb, when in the previous building she didn't have to climb any stairs.
She just got on the elevator and went upstairs.
Yeah, and because they were now working out of a military compound, there were no elevators, or next door to a military compound, or a repurposed military building. And so she was forced to now climb those stairs. And she said it was the worst thing to ever happen to her. It was so difficult. But after a couple of weeks, after a couple of months, she stopped noticing the fact that she had to climb 43 stairs. She had gone so far into sedentary behavior that those 43 stairs defined her morning. But because she had to do it, and she had to change, she stopped feeling them. She also mentioned something else, is that because now they're working in this military compound, there was no KFC, there was no McDonald's, there was none of these things around them. So she had no access to any of that food. There was only a canteen, and this canteen served healthy options. She hated the food, but after a good couple of weeks, she got used to it. And she was like, actually, you know what? I feel sick when I eat KFC now. I feel sick when I have McDonald's. So it's interesting how having all of this access and all of this easy access and this freedom to not have to walk to certain places, not have to climb stairs to get somewhere, makes us complacent. And just removing the access to that can change your life and actually make you're now forced to move, you're now forced to make healthier choices. So I just found that was such an interesting story, how she was forced to make those changes. And now she's like, actually, it's not that bad anymore.
So what I took away from that story was, number one, our bodies are the best at adapting to the current environment. So
Yes.
as you mentioned, she used to have a lot of fast food very regularly. Her body used to see that as the status quo. And then when she started having healthy food more often, she then noticed that she gets sick now when she changes from her new status quo, which is healthy, to not unhealthy necessarily, but fast food. And so another thing that we've seen with movement is when it starts, it is difficult. Because the other thing that I remember from that lady was that I left halfway through because I got frustrated because she was not accepting any of the positives that we were trying to give her out of her experience. And she told me the same story 15 odd times.
Oh, she was talking at us for about 25 minutes.
It was actually 30. So I timed it because I stayed for 15 and then I went and I walked to the other exhibitors. And I came back and she was such a lovely woman, but she wasn't accepting what we were trying to sort of give her, which was the positive of movement and eating healthy. And so I got annoyed and I just left. And then when I came back, I was lucky enough to catch just the end of what she was saying. And she was saying, but now the stairs are not that hard. And now I actually look forward to getting to it. And now I enjoy the food. And And so for me, it was a very interesting thing because another part of changing your habits is that it's change. It's hard. It's not easy. And so when it comes to these desk exercises, the reason we've also designed them is so that they are short bursts. It's a lot easier to implement one small thing every day than it is to try and implement. So for instance, when I come to you, as someone who's working 10 hours a day, let's include the travel time because now the M1's out. So we now have to deal with that for 8 months. Yeah. So on top of your normal time, you're actually sitting in traffic, which is more frustrating than just driving. So let's say now we try and say to you, listen, you've got to spend 10 hours of your day getting to work, working, getting home. You've now also got to fit in an hour somewhere to go to the gym. That sounds unrealistic. We've only got realistically 16 hours in our day if we're getting 8 hours of sleep, which is why so many people don't get 8 hours of sleep, my apologies, is because they physically cannot fit 8 hours of sleep into their day and do everything that they're supposed to do for their bodies. That's why a lot of CEOs, etc., are working 16 hours and they sleep like 4, and their bodies adapt to it. It doesn't mean it's ideal. Their bodies do adapt to it and become more efficient at doing it. And so they are still able to do a lot of healthy things. But what I've experienced, I did too much in my day just in general. It wasn't even just that I was doing too much of one thing. And that can also be a negative. So sometimes doing something as simple as exercises, it's a humbling reminder that a very small amount of effort goes a long way.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us on this podcast. Join us next time for
Fuel for Focus, how nutrition impacts productivity.
Cool. See you guys next week.